They said a security guard was not good enough for me, and my family refused to attend my wedding. I walked into my new life alone, but then a video went viral that revealed a secret about my husband that changed the way everyone saw him. The day of my wedding, my father called me one last time and told me he would not step foot inside the ceremony because the man I was marrying was only a security guard. At that exact moment, my wedding ring was in my hand, my car was parked outside, and my husband's small rented house was waiting for us to begin our new life. I ended the call, straightened my white dress, and walked into the church alone. My name is Emma Collins. I was 29 years old at the time and I lived in a small suburban town in Ohio. From the outside, my life looked pretty ordinary. I worked for a local insurance company, made coffee every morning, drove my old silver Honda Civic, and went to my mother's house every Sunday for brunch. The most important thing to my family was what people thought about us. My father, Richard Collins, was a successful businessman. He had worked hard throughout his life, and I will never deny that he did a lot for our family. But over time I realized that for him, respect often meant looking down on people who had less. When I told him I wanted to marry Daniel, his first question was not what kind of person he was. His question was, "What does he do?" I said, "He's a security officer." There was silence in the room for a few seconds. Then my father gave a small laugh and said, "Emma, are you joking?" I looked into his eyes and said, "No. I'm serious." He leaned back in his chair and said, "You got an education, you built a good career, and in the end you chose a guard?" That was the first time I realized he wasn't seeing Daniel. He was only seeing his uniform. Daniel Harper was 34 years old. I met him when my company's building was staying open late one night. I was sitting at my desk finishing the last report, and by around 8:30 p.m. the entire floor was empty. Daniel knocked on my office door and said, "You're still here?" I laughed and said, "Maybe I'm more stubborn than you are." He smiled and replied, "Then you probably need some coffee." He brought me a cup from the machine. That was all it was. But over the next few months I watched the way he treated people. He gave the cleaning staff the same respect he gave the company executives. He brought food for another security guard who worked the overnight shift. During winter he would give his jacket to someone who had been standing outside too long. One day I asked him, "Why do you always think about other people?" He shrugged and said, "Because I remember what it feels like when nobody thinks about you." I never forgot that answer. But my family never saw any of that. All they saw was that he didn't drive an expensive car. He didn't have a high-ranking position. He didn't own a house like my father's. When I got engaged, my sister Rachel congratulated me, but there was no happiness in her voice. She said, "You're really going to do this?" I asked, "What do you mean?" She said, "I mean, people are going to have questions." I said, "Who are these people?" She didn't answer. 2 weeks before the wedding my mother called me. She said, "Your father is very upset." I said, "Why is he upset?" "Because I'm happy." There was silence for a moment. Then she quietly said, "He wants you to think about this." I knew exactly what that meant. They wanted me to leave Daniel. The day before the wedding my father sent me a message saying he would not attend the ceremony. He wrote, "I can't stand here and watch my daughter ruin her life." I read that message several times. I started writing a response, then deleted it. I wrote another one, then deleted that too. Finally I sent only one sentence. "I wanted you at my wedding, but I can't live my life based on someone else's decision." The next day my aunt, a few friends, and Daniel's family were sitting inside the church. My parents' chairs were empty. Those empty chairs stayed in front of me throughout the entire ceremony. When Daniel saw me walking toward him, I noticed a moment of worry cross his face. He knew my father hadn't come. He held my hand and quietly said, "If you want, we can stop." I looked at him. I said, "No. This is why I'm here." We got married. Life after that was not easy. We moved into a small apartment. The kitchen was so tiny that only one person could stand there comfortably at a time. Our washing machine made strange noises sometimes. During winter, cold air came through the edges of the window. But I felt peaceful. Daniel woke up early every morning. He made coffee for me even though he preferred tea himself. He was not the kind of person who forgot my birthday. He remembered the difficult days I had at work. But the distance between me and my family kept growing. At first my mother called occasionally. Then weeks passed. Then months. On Facebook, I saw my sister, my mother, and my father posting pictures from family events. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas gatherings, small celebrations. I was never in those pictures. At one point I started wondering if maybe I really was wrong. Maybe losing my family was too high a price to pay. Then one day I found out something that completely changed the way I saw everything. It happened about 8 months after our wedding. I came home from work and found Daniel sitting on the couch. He had an old envelope in his hands. I asked, "What happened?" He stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I don't know how to tell you this." I sat down beside him. He opened the envelope. Inside were some old documents and a newspaper clipping. I looked at the picture. There was a young man in it. I asked, "Who is that?" Daniel said, "That's me." I was surprised. "You?" He nodded. Then he told me that 10 years earlier he had saved a family during a dangerous situation. At the time he had just started working in security. One night at a shopping center, a man began threatening people. Daniel moved everyone to a safe area until police arrived, and he was injured during the situation. After that incident he received a local bravery award. But that was not the important part. The important part was that one of the people from the family he saved was connected to one of my company's biggest clients. That person had recommended Daniel for better positions several times. Daniel had refused. I asked, "Why?" He said, "Because I work to help people, not just to get a better title." I stayed quiet. For the first time, I understood that the person my family called just a guard had something inside him that many wealthy people never have. Character. A few weeks later something else came out. My company was going through a major change. Several companies were applying for a new security contract. During a meeting, my boss announced that Daniel's security team had been selected. I was shocked. Later I learned that Daniel had spent years training his team. He was not just someone standing by a door. He trained people, handled emergency situations, and helped younger employees learn the job. But he had never told me any of this. Because recognition was never his goal. Around the same time my father found out everything. Maybe for the first time, my father realized he had judged a person only by his job title. He called me. I waited a long time before answering. He said, "Emma, can we talk?" I said, "About what?" He took a deep breath. "About Daniel." I stayed silent. He said, "Maybe I was wrong." That was the sentence I could have waited years to hear. But strangely, when it finally came, I didn't feel the happiness I imagined I would. I said, "You weren't only wrong about Daniel, Dad." He became quiet. I said, "You also made me feel like my choices didn't matter." He said, "I was just trying to protect you." I replied, "There's a difference between protection and control." There was silence. Then he asked, "Can Daniel meet with me?" I said, "That decision is Daniel's." I asked Daniel. He didn't say yes immediately. He simply said, "I'll go for you." The meeting happened at a coffee shop. For the first time my father didn't ask Daniel about his job. He asked, "Are you happy with Emma?" Daniel said, "Yes." My father nodded. Then he said, "I judged you wrong." Daniel only replied, "The problem was never that you didn't know me. The problem was that you never tried to know me." My father had no answer. A few months later he started coming to our house. Things never went back exactly the way they were. And maybe they never will. Trust takes time to rebuild. I have now been married for 3 years. We still live in the same town, but we have our own small house now. In our backyard there is a small tree Daniel planted. Every spring it grows new branches. My father still avoids talking about some of the old things. So do I. Some things don't need to be forgotten. You just learn how to live with them. A few days ago I saw my father and Daniel standing together in the garage. They were fixing an old lawn mower. My father was laughing. Daniel was laughing too. I stood at the door for a moment and watched them. 3 years ago my family thought a security guard was not good enough for me. Today that same man is one of the most respected people in my family. Me. I have learned only one thing. Sometimes a person's true value is not found in the job they do. It is found in the way they treat other people. That is something you cannot buy with a title, a car, or a bigger house. If this story touched you, take a moment to support our channel by giving this video a like and subscribing for more real-life inspired stories. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories of love, family, and unexpected twists. Thank you for watching and we truly appreciate having you here with us.